It is hard to believe that in the year 2008, an age where information has never been as freely or as widely distributed, that there still exist people who believe in the flat earth hypothesis. There are numerous ways to refute this idea. A ship will appear to sail over the horizon. The rebuttal that I've heard to this is that sea level falls as you near the edge, accounting for the ship's apparent motion over the horizon. The small problem being that, well, nobody seems to be able to find an edge. Or the 150-foot ice wall they say is guarded by the world's governments who organised the Iraq War as a means of recruiting people to guard said wall. Another piece of evidence, first used by Aristotle, is the curved shadow the Earth makes on the Moon during a lunar eclipse. Shadow object theory, reflection theory, and some incompetent uses of general relativity are just some of the intellectual train wrecks that have been proposed by this peculiar hardcore to explain this one away. But in 1956, the scientists at NASA produced the motherlode. Actual photographic evidence showing conclusively that the Earth is round. The society was practically forced into crying hoax here. There is another photograph showing the curvature of the Earth. This one was taken by Mingus Union High School students using a helium balloon. The explanation given for this on the Flat Earth Society forums was, "No photos can be used as evidence as all photos can be faked. No explanation needed." There is a point to all this though. In a world of over 6 billion people, the International Flat Earth Society boasts a membership of around 3,000. They are fringe, but they are useful in demonstrating an important point. The reason why so many people reject the flat earth hypothesis, particularly Bible literalists who actually read their Bible, is because these evidences are familiar to most. A standard education in most countries will expose you to these, and to some degree you can investigate these evidence for yourself. We can see the curved shadow during a lunar eclipse. We can see ships sail over the horizon. We have seen the NASA photographs. Hell, most people will have done a bit of travelling between time zones, which is enough on its own to debunk a flat Earth. Because of this familiarity, the vast majority of people accept the fact that the Earth is a sphere. But when we move on to the phenomenon that is young Earth creationism, most people don't have the same familiarity with the evidences. Most of us aren't familiar with sedimentation rates because we aren't geochronologists. Most of us aren't familiar with radiometric dating because we aren't atomic physicists. Most of us aren't familiar with plate tectonics because we aren't geologists. We aren't familiar with stellar chemistry because we aren't astrophysicists. We aren't familiar with taxonomy because we aren't zoologists. We aren't familiar with genetics because we aren't geneticists. We aren't familiar with retroviruses because we aren't virologists. We aren't familiar with comparative anatomy because we aren't anatomists. We aren't familiar with biogeography because we aren't biologists. We aren't familiar with the fossil record because we aren't paleontologists, etc. Speaking of the fossil record, during the Dover trial, paleontologist Kevin Padian testified as an expert witness for the prosecution. During his testimony, which you can find linked to in the description box, he details some of the fossil evidence used to support evolutionary theory. Practically everything Dr. Padian presented was unknown to the lay people in the courtroom. As journalist Margaret Talbot of The New Yorker put it, it was a science class that everybody wished they'd been able to take when they were in school. And now to the central point of this video. Each of the scientific disciplines previously mentioned directly contradicts young Earth creationism. No amount of hand-waving, denialism, screaming hoax, reinterpreting or semantic bullshit will change this. Those disciplines flat out contradict the young Earth creationist position. While the evidence against the flat Earth is familiar to us, the evidence against young Earth creationism isn't necessarily so. I live in Ireland, and the standard high school biology textbook contains a chapter on evolution which is rich in evidences. It seems that the biology textbooks in America don't teach this, most likely due to pressure from a religious right. It seems that if the Institute for Creation Research oh, that's a good one. If the Institute for Creation Research had their way, then those educational lapses will extend into degree level. Educational buffoonery aside, there is nothing stopping anybody from learning more. You have access to the internet. You have access to Google Scholar, which is a gateway to all manner of peer-reviewed scientific papers. You have access to your local library, which has books on a variety of scientific topics, assuming you don't live in Texas. Someone claiming that the Earth is flat doesn't know what they are talking about. Someone espousing young Earth creationism likewise doesn't know what they are talking about. Chants of no transitional fossils and science supports creation repeated ad nauseum do not change the facts. And the chanter really has no excuse for skimping on their research in an age when information is so freely available. The difference between a flat earther and a young Earth creationist is one of degree, not of kind.